What's up, YouTube? It's Kyle from HospitalityMD, back with another interview from our podcast interview series presented right here on YouTube. So before we get started, go down below, press subscribe, turn on notifications, give us a thumbs up, and be ready to share this video with anyone you think would find value in our content. Today's episode is great. It is with Dallas Widmark. He is the general manager of the Lookout at Lake Chelan, which is a neighborhood of short-term vacation rentals within a resort setting. And he's managing the whole thing. So toward the end of the episode, we're going to hear more about that and kind of the interesting concept, which is new to me until Dallas informed me about it. So I think it'll be interesting to you guys as well. But the big takeaway for today's episode is that Dallas tells us his hospitality story. It's 25 years, a quarter century of life with hospitality in the background. This episode means so much to me because it just goes to show that what you give to hospitality in pennies, this industry will return to you in dollars. This is Dallas Widmark with his story of a quarter century in hotels. Enjoy the episode and be sure to follow Dallas on all of his social media networks, which we have in the description below. Enjoy the episode, guys. Dallas, thank you for being on Hospitality MD, for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. I mean, I've become a big fan of yours and Hospitality MD pretty quickly, and I love what you guys are doing and have a lot of respect for what you guys are doing. So, yeah, pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly an honor to have you on the show. Now, talking to you off the record and everything, come to find out you have a roller coaster of a hospitality journey, as do a lot of us here. And I definitely think that our listeners will be able to take some big, pieces of value away from hearing about your story. So, right now you're the GM at the Lookout at Lake Chelan, which is, we'll certainly dive into that a little bit more. Not your typical hotel, right? But or really a hotel at all for that matter. In a lot of ways. But before we get there, let's start at the beginning. And I'm going to take you way back. You may have heard me ask this question to some of our other guests, but do you remember the first time you felt hospitality, that enunciation moment? Think as far back as you can remember.
Yeah, and listening to your other shows, I knew that the question was coming. And, I grew up, I was born in Oregon, but we moved to Florida when I was about 5 years old. And from 5 to 8 years old, we were in Florida. So some of my earliest memories are in Florida, and it's obviously like, beach town. We were living in Tampa Bay, and we would go to the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando. We would go to Longboat Key, which is another kind of resorty area down there. So I remember just how cool it was going to like resorts and hotels and like, you're on vacation, you're at the beach, you're in the pool. And it's not that I made up my mind when I was, 8 years old that I was going to be in hospitality, but certainly when it came time to go get a job, I was drawn to, hotels, resorts, and just wanting to be in that environment where people were having a good time. And it was all about, fun and vacation and cool places. And some of my earliest memories, again, were just these great places in Florida. And when it came time to go to work, I just naturally gravitated towards a resort, and then just kind of, and it's even after that, I probably worked in hotels and resorts for a good, 7, 8, 9 years before I actually made a definitive decision to give it a run as an actual career.
So just to clarify here, was hotels, was that like your first job or
Yeah. So I mean, I always wanted to work. I always liked the idea of working and having my own money and whatnot. And when I was 15 years old, just looking for a summer job, a part-time job, I went to work at the Point Hilton Resort on South Mountain. It's in Phoenix, Arizona. It's now the Arizona Grand Resort. This big, sprawling, beautiful resort there in Phoenix. Went to work in the fitness center, and I was, cleaning bathrooms and folding towels and making, smoothies and protein drinks for the guests and whatnot. And in the summertime, I got to go work at the pool on the weekends and hang out at the bar and drink virgin daiquiris, and then make sure the guest had their towels. The place was tidy and cleaned up, and it's 115 degrees in Phoenix, so my uniform was board shorts and flip flops, and I was encouraged to get in the pool as often as I needed to because it was so hot. And it was just, that was my first job. And it was really cool. It was really cool. And just kind of went from there.
Is that the Hilton Point Tapatio? Is that what that is?
There was three of them. It was the Point at South Mountain, the Point at Tapatio Cliffs, and man, there was another one, Squaw Peak, the Point at Squaw Peak. And
I didn't know there were three of them. Yeah, because I stayed at the Tapatio one time, but I never even knew that it was all like kind of a series of resorts.
Yeah, so I believe Tapatio and Squaw Peak still exist as Hilton resort properties. If you look up the Arizona Grand Resort, that's the old Point South Mountain. Big, beautiful, sprawling resort, golf courses, just a really nice place.
They don't make them like they used to. I'm telling you, those, like staying at, I know it's not quite exactly the same location, but I can imagine it because I stayed at the other one, and it was just something special, even though it wasn't, I'm going to be honest here. Like some of the, you could tell that it was an older property, right?
Yeah.
They weren't hiding it. It was pretty obvious, but it didn't take away from my experience. It just felt like this is where the community goes to have a good time. And this is where people come from all over to experience the area.
Yeah. Classic Arizona resort, like desert resort with the pools and everything. And great places.
Well, that sounds like a hell of a first job to me.
Yeah.
My first job was at a Hilton, no longer a Hilton, but at a Hilton golf resort right outside Chicago, working at the front desk. But man, to be going and taking a dip in the pool and doing that sort of stuff sounds like, how could you turn back away from that, right?
It was a lot of fun. And I played a lot of, sports when I was younger, and football and baseball. So everything was always part-time, summertime, on the weekends here and there. And, the rest of high school, I can't remember why I left that job, but I worked at like a bagel shop, and I worked at like a pizza shop. But then post high school, I needed a job. My dad had, his business had done a lot of, meetings and events at the Phoenix Airport Hilton. And he knew the GM fairly well down there. And he said, hey, go down. It was this little Norbert was his name. I believe he was German, this little like fiery German guy. He said, go on down to the Hilton, talk to Norbert, get a job. So I went down there. I think I was about 18 years old at the time. And, he took me back to the HR, the job postings, and said, what looks good to you? And when I had arrived to the hotel, I saw the bellman and the van drivers out front, a bunch of guys like me, a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-old guys. And that was one of the openings. And so I took a stab at that. And I ended up working there for 4 years in that position, all through college. It was just such a great position. They were super flexible with me, playing sports, and, they would take me off the schedule for the seasons, let me come back, work as much, as little as I needed. And, that was a lot of fun. So this is where the story starts to get interesting. So I'm chasing my sports dream and this, that, and the other. And I end up going to Omaha, Nebraska to play indoor football, to play arena football.
Nice.
So I drive out there. And again, I go to the airport Hilton, say, hey, I'm going out to Omaha. I'm going to give this thing a go. And they said, great, go for it. And they just take me off the schedule. They don't terminate me or anything. It was always like, hey, when you're ready to come back, we've got a spot for you. So I go to Omaha, Nebraska. I think I'm 22 or 23 at the time. The practices are at 8 p.m. at night because, this is like minor league indoor football. It's nothing special, right? And, there's like school teachers and guys that have day jobs. So the practices are at 8 p.m. So I'm sitting around all day, right? So I said, well, I'll go get a job. I'll get a part-time job so I can work during the day. And I went to a DoubleTree, the Omaha DoubleTree, and I walked in and they hired me on the spot for a front desk agent position. And mostly it was because of my Hilton background. I had, essentially 5 years at 2 different Hilton properties at that point. And that was one of the first times where like the light bulb went off and it was like, hey, this is kind of cool. I can kind of go anywhere and get a job, because there's hotels everywhere. And, so I kind of have something here. And, as the story goes in my sports career, I break my collarbone in a game, and it wasn't broken. It was like obliterated. It was just like,
Oh, wow.
So I have the choice to get surgery and for them to put a plate on my collarbone or to just let it, heal. And at that point, I already had surgery on my knee in the past. I had surgery on my shoulder in the past, all sports injuries. And I said, no, I'm done with surgery. I'll let it heal. So I couldn't get back home to Arizona fast enough. And it's like a 20-something hour drive. So I'm driving back. I've got this, collarbone. There's no cast or anything. They just put it in a sling and super uncomfortable. So I head back. I'm like, man, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? Right. Like the sports thing, obviously, like I needed to move on. So go back, to the airport Hilton. And, I didn't know much at that time, but I did know that if I was going to advance in the hotel hospitality world, that I needed to get behind the front desk. I had been a bellman van driver for 4 years, but I mean, those guys, right? I was a hustler, right? I was,
Oh, yeah.
bellman, van driver, valet, like we hustled and it was about making those tips and making that cash. And so I did feel like it was time for a change of scenery. So I got a front desk job at the Chaparral, this Chaparral Hotel Suites, I believe is the name of the property in Scottsdale, Arizona. And Scottsdale is kind of like kind of a swanky area and a lot of nightlife and a lot of activity down there. And got a front desk position. Started working at the front desk, and this is right just after I was working at the airport Hilton when 9/11 happened. And post 9/11, and we were an airport property, so I was driving to the airport in big vans, right? So we had to go post 9/11. We had to go through this whole background check process and essentially gain clearance to be able to drive at the airport. And we got these little placards with our face on it, and we had numbers, and it was something that followed the person, not the property. So when I moved to this new property, I had my driver clearance with me. So I was working at the front desk. And then before long, I was going to the airport and picking people up. Then I was, working shifts, answering PBX, making reservations. And, there'd be scenarios where I would, take the incoming call, go out to the airport, pick people up, bring them back, bring their luggage in, hop behind the front desk, check them in, hop back around, take them to the room, and do the whole thing, front to back, which was really cool. And, so I was having a good time, and, there was these MODs, right? And they were a little bit older than me, not too much older than me. And I was just kind of getting my feel for things, and I started watching them, and, it was one of those like, man, I think I found out that they were making like $28,000 a year or something on salary. So it was like all the money in the world at that point. Right. And, I was like, man, I could do that. I could do that. And like, and I think I could maybe do it a little bit better. So I kept my eye out for, opportunities and wanted to move up. Right. And, a buddy of mine finished his hospitality degree from Northern Arizona University, and he was at a golf resort in Scottsdale, and he had left that property to go take an AGM spot at a Comfort Inn and Suites. And at his old property, I don't think it was his old position, but it was a position at his old property, a front desk supervisor at this golf resort. So I call him up and say, hey, I want to go, apply for this position. Can you put a good word in for me? So I go interview for it, and I get the job, which is great. And probably at the time, didn't have any business getting that job. I think I've been behind the front desk for about 6 months at that point. And I'm gonna go be this, swing shift supervisor at this 386 room golf resort in Scottsdale on the TPC golf course next to the Fairmont Princess. It wasn't the Fairmont property, but it was in that neck of the woods. But
that's how the game goes. That's the best part about it is like, I have no business doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Just go for it, man. And, another one of those light bulb moments that I go to the Chaparral Suites, and these are like hourly positions. I can't, this is back in the early 2000s. So, could have been more like 10, 12 bucks an hour or whatever. And I go in to put in my notice. I'm like, hey, I got the supervisor spot and blah, blah, blah. Thanks for everything. Here's my notice. And they were like, well, hey, how much are they paying you? And I was like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, they didn't want me to leave. And that was like, oh, hey, I've got some versatility. They don't want me to leave. Like they're asking me how much money they're going to pay me at the other place. And I'm like, oh, okay. I have a little, I've got some negotiating room now. And I've kind of have built up this body of work somehow inadvertently, right? That's worth a little something. So anyways, I end up moving on, it was the Resort Suites of Scottsdale was the name of the property at the time. Since then, it changed to the Zona Suites, XONA. I don't even know if it's what it is, right? I haven't checked in on that property in 10 years, probably. But yeah, I got swing shift supervisor, running that team, learning a lot on the go, independent property, and then about a year and a half in, or while I'm there, I'm like, okay, I need to go back to school and get my degree. So I re-enroll in the hospitality program for Northern Arizona University through their satellite campus in Scottsdale, which was a fantastic program. Never even had to set foot on the campus in Flagstaff to get my degree. But going through school and just kind of like, doing my thing, eventually become the front office manager there after about a year and a half. It was good. Things were good. And then,
so just to kind of check in, like how old are you roughly at this time? Like you kind of landed your first manager gig after accidentally building up an entire half decade of experience or more in the hotel industry.
Yeah. I'm 25. Okay, nice. At this point. And I meet my wife, my future wife. And she at the time lived in San Diego, California, and myself in Phoenix. So we were doing a long distance thing. And, it came time to like, okay, what are we doing here? Right. It's been 10 months. Like, what are we doing? I have a bunch of family in San Diego, in Southern California, Oceanside, Carlsbad, more specifically. And I was like, well, hey, I've been going to Southern California my whole life. I've got tons of family out there. There's tons of resorts out there. Like, I'll just move to San Diego. Right. And, another theme in my moves is every time I went to go make a move, I had all kinds of people telling me like, why are you leaving? Like, this is crazy. You've got this good setup. Like, why are you moving on? And, a lot of times it's just like my gut, right? Like, no, I think this is the right thing to do. Like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Like, it'll be good. So I moved out just to San Diego, no job lined up. Again, I'm 25, like, so I go out there, get a job as the guest services manager at the Estancia La Jolla, which is probably the first like legit like 4-diamond hotel. I think at the time it was a Destination Hotels, it was managed by Destination Hotels. I think it still is. But like the first like legit like 4-diamond, like really, La Jolla, California, like the real deal, right? Beautiful hotel, lots of wedding business, big lots of groups, and it's California, it's La Jolla, front desk, bellman, valet, big valet operation with the events and the weddings, and so get going there, and learn a lot really quick. And again, I'm only a few months in. My wife at the time was working in the medical field more, and she was more like straight Monday through Friday during the day, and I'm working like 6 days a week, swing shift. So we're not seeing each other a whole lot. But it was another one of those, like I was the guest services manager, and I reported to, it wasn't a director of rooms. They had a heart of the house, front of the house, essentially those two positions together would be a director of rooms.
Right.
But the gal that I reported to, and she was fine, but again, it was another one of those like, I could do this a little better. I could do this a little better. And I've been doing swing shift for, a couple of years now. And in Arizona, when I became the front office manager, I was back on day shift, and I was like, I want to kind of get back to like being the one making the schedule and working during the day. I could see my girlfriend at the time more. So I apply and I get this job again. I probably have a little bit of like imposter syndrome, but didn't have any business getting. But it was the director of front office at the Hilton San Diego Resort on Mission Bay. And big kind of iconic property in San Diego. It's old property. It's right off the 5 freeway, right on Mission Bay, right next to SeaWorld. Anyone who's spent any time in California knows exactly where it's at, right off the 5. You go right by it. I think 354 rooms, a lot of villas and lanais, and very, very Southern California, San Diego-ish hotel, a union property, which was lost on me. I didn't, I was going through the interview process. I didn't, okay, yeah, that's fine. So anyways, get that job. But to be honest, what a great team that was there, the great front office team. And we kicked some ass, to be honest. I mean, and that was another legitimate, 4-diamond property. My first exposure to like a loyalty program and the Hilton Honors members and the SALT scores, and, the very kind of structured and yeah, that was fantastic. Fantastic. Learned a lot, and a year and a half into that, time to get married, right? Time to get married. So my wife, who is, I mentioned she worked in like the medical field. So my wife she's brilliant, right? She graduated, she's a Division I athlete, graduated with a degree in biology, I think like second in her class or something crazy like that, and was working in like a pain management office. But she was going to go to school to be a physician assistant, to be a PA.
Hold on one second. I want to ask you, because you said you met her at the hotel, right? But she lived in San Diego. Was she a guest, or was she working? Like, how did you?
Yeah, no, happen? I didn't meet her at a hotel. I met her while I was working at the hotel, but I met her through some mutual friends of my sister.
Gotcha.
I met her. So, but no, she wasn't a guest at the hotel.
Gotcha.
But anyway, she gets accepted to a PA program in Glendale, Arizona. So we're like, great, we're getting married. I'm from Arizona. All my family's still there. The stars aligned, and the director of front office position opens up at the Hilton San Diego, the Hilton Scottsdale Resort and Villas. So I interviewed, and it was just like a done deal, right? And it all kind of worked out. We moved over to Arizona. And so we move over, we get married. And then, so I'm 28 at this point. It's 2008. I think I did like the 5 most stressful things you could do in 1 year. Like I moved, I bought a house, I started a new job, I got married. And then right at the end of the year, my oldest daughter was born New Year's Eve. So I snuck in our first kid on New Year's Eve. So all of those things happened in 1 year. So we're just, cruising along. And then I always wanted to open a property, be part of an opening team. And, so this is 2008. And the tribal gaming industry, a lot of the Native American casino properties back, and they still are, but really in this time, there was a lot of them building these really nice first-class hotels to accompany their casinos. And in Arizona, there was two tribes that were doing the same thing, the Salt River Pima tribe and the Gila River tribe. I was lucky enough to join the Gila River team, their pre-open team, as the director of rooms. And made that move. And again, it was another one of those, why are you leaving? They didn't counter, but they said, oh, we'll make you the director of operations. Like, you sure you could be the director of operations at a Hilton resort in Scottsdale? And I was like, no, I want to open a hotel. Like, I think this is the right thing to do. This is the way to go. So make that move. And that was what a great experience to go through that. I think I was the third or fourth hotel employee hired, and 8-9 months before we opened. And we myself and then the revenue manager, his name's Matt Kaler, still there, like 11 plus years later. We wrote every single P&P policy, for that entire operation, the front desk, bell, valet, PBX, reservations. We hired every single person, housekeeping, the whole 9 yards. And it was their hiring practices at the time were pretty structured, where every position, no matter what it was, had to have like a panel interview of like multiple people. So you'd have to block to hire a room attendant, you'd have to block a half a day and get 2 other people and sit in a room, and scheduled people would come in and you'd all ask them the same questions and you'd score them. It was this whole thing, right, for every single position to open that hotel. And, we wanted to be a 4-diamond property. So everything was geared towards, 4-diamond and training people and getting going. 242 rooms. So we opened up, it's pretty wild. It's pretty crazy, but it's a lot of fun. We get open, we get our 4-diamond, and we're just kind of cruising at that point. So I'm there for almost 3 years, a little over, 2.5 years or so, coming up on 3. It was another one of those. There was a managing director of hotel operations, and in the casino environment, typically there's a general manager, but they're typically more of a gaming person. And then your hotel is more of like a department within the casino umbrella.
Interesting.
So your managing director or your director of hotel ops is actually more like a hotel GM. So the guy I reported to, long-term Hilton guy, like 30 plus years, really great guy, but probably at the twilight of his career. And it was another one of those, like, man, I feel like I'm, kind of pulling his weight and, doing his job, whatnot. There was there's a lot of turnover in like the tribal environment, and some of them, not all of them, and some of them. And there was a big shakeup in the CEO, the GM, and, all got moved along. A new regime comes in. They pretty quickly moved my boss along. And, I think myself and maybe a handful of other people just assumed that like I would just get ushered into that role and to be the managing director of hotel operations. But that didn't happen. And they brought in one of their guys, someone that they knew and worked with beforehand, and, kind of went through the interview process, which might have been a little bit of a, just going through the motions, that they already had their guy, it didn't matter.
Right.
And, so that
politics of it all.
That really, and that really bothered me, it really did. And, to be honest, it was the beginning of the end of my time there. But, the new guy comes in, and, I made a decision though, like, hey, this, I can either go about this one of two ways. I could be, kind of a jerk and not help them out, or I could be honest with them and help them out. And, I chose the latter. And his first day, I just sat down with him. I said, "Hey, I don't know if you've been briefed or how much you know, but I really am disappointed that I don't have your job right now. I'm really disappointed, and I feel like I should have it. But I'm your right hand man. Like, I got all the answers for you. Like anything that you need, like, I'm here for you." And he was a great guy. I mean, it's no fault of his own, and he knew his stuff. He was very experienced, and I definitely was able to learn from him. So we get going, and then in my personal life at the same time, my wife, she was kind of feeling the need to get back up to Washington State, where she's from, and she's got some more family up there. So I was kind of given the directive of, like, keep your eye out for opportunities in Washington. So at that time, the Swinomish tribe, they're going through the same process that he had just went through. They're building a hotel. They need hotel people. They need a hotel person. I go up. I go through the interview process. I know it's between me and one other guy, and I don't get that job. Right? They go with the other guy, who's a local guy, but I knew that he didn't have any casino experience. He was just a pure hotel guy, very experienced local hotel guy. But having gone through the process in the Native American environment, I knew that could be difficult. When I opened that hotel at Gila River, the casino people that didn't necessarily have any hospitality or hotel background, and the hotel folks that didn't have any casino background, there was definitely some clashing there, right? So I said, "Hey, no worries. I want to get to the area. If it doesn't work out, let me know. Go back to Arizona." The guy they brought in doesn't work out, to no surprise, to be honest, and he moves on. But the one thing that he did for me, and I think this goes back to, maybe how I approached his arrival, that when he went, I think he only lasted like 5 or 6 months, and he left on his own accord. But when he left, at least this is what he tells me, that he said, "Hey, you don't need to search for anybody. Like, Dallas is your guy. Like, Dallas is your guy." So, they put me into this intern role, but still it's not clean, right? It's like, oh, they're going to do this, and maybe they're going to change this. And they kind of drug their feet on putting their paperwork in for my pay increase. And it just still wasn't like,
Right.
it wasn't clean. Right. So I'm kind of going along. Then, a couple months later, my phone rings. It's Swinomish. I see the name on the phone, and right away I'm like, the guy didn't work out. Like, here we go. Right. Take the call. Yep. And it's, that sure enough, the guy bailed. I think it was 60 days before they opened their property. So it was like a wild 3 weeks, but I think it was up there within 3 weeks. And again, it was another, the GM at the time at Gila, him and I never really kind of clicked. I had to track him down to give my notice. And between the time I gave my notice and the 2 weeks I left, I didn't see him or talk to him at all the whole time. But the CEO at the time, the president of the board at the time, they both, called me in and talked with me. Two people I respect highly to this day, and really kind of major players in that Native American tribal casino hospitality space. And again, it was another one of those, "Are you sure you want to leave? Like, you're teed up to be the managing director, and kind of like, why would you leave? You've got this great job, blah, blah, blah." And it was another one of those, like, just my gut, trust my gut. This is the right thing to do. And it was a really good opportunity. And it was a general manager position, which appealed to me a great deal. I wasn't going to report to a person. I was going to report to a board. It had food and beverage oversight, which I had not had before. And I have formal education in food and beverage via my college degree, and had worked line level positions, but had never had any oversight over like restaurant operations or banquets. And this position had the banquet department, which would be new. and a fine dining steak and seafood restaurant, which would be new. So all of that was just very appealing to me. So we make the move, and we opened that hotel, and the hotel, we kicked ass with the hotel from day one. We really did. And when you add a hotel to a casino environment, it changes the ball game in every regard, in business and bottom line, in hospitality, bringing that element of hospitality, which some casinos may or may not have had. It just changes the whole thing. The food and beverage, as most new outlets do, took a little time to get some traction, but within a year or two, we started cranking in both our fine dining restaurant as well as the banquet department. And we were just cruising along. And, a few years after we opened, the property itself had, I think my dates are probably wrong, but I think 1985, a bingo hall was built. And then in like 1994, right next to it, they built a casino that extended onto it. And then in 2012, we added the hotel. And when you walk from one end of the property to the other, you could see it's like three different eras that you're going through. So think about what a 1985 bingo hall looks like versus a brand new, the lodge was beautiful, like just, really first class finishings. And so we went through this whole project to renovate the whole rest of the property, to make it a one consistent property. We added a ton of back of the house space for the employees. We expanded the casino floor. We reprogrammed all of the food and beverage outlets and added a couple food and beverage outlets. And I got to be heavily involved in the food and beverage portion of that project, which was great. So we go through that, and and really settling in my personal life, and having a bunch of kids, and just really getting involved in the community. And been there about 7 years really at this point. I'm a guy who I always like to have things going on. What's next? What's next project? What are we going to build? How are we going to advance? Right? I don't like to stay like stagnant. And
right, when everything is going perfect, it's like you start wondering like what's going to be the next big thing.
Yeah, and I really so a few things started happening. One, I mentioned my personal life continued to evolve, and the very nature of the casino gaming environment started to really not align with myself, on a personal standpoint. And that started to become a conflict, right? The people were great that I worked with. It had nothing to do with the people. It was just the very nature of the business that we were doing. And then this, again, that need to like, let's press. And I had this RV resort project that I was really pushing. We had a 33 space RV park that I had that was just cranking. And there was a huge market, especially up in the Pacific Northwest, for RV resorts, these cabin resorts, and kind of glamping and park models. And we had a beautiful piece of property to do it. We got the feasibility study. I was just charging ahead with that, and there was some buy-in, but that project kind of was kind of tabled or kind of stalled for a while. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, we're just kind of getting complacent here. And also those two things, but then I was continuing to consume, more about, company culture and core values. I started reading a lot of, all your classic business books. And, because when I started there at Swinomish, again, I can't say enough about, the Swinomish people. They gave me an opportunity when I was 31 years old to go up and be the general manager and open these outlets for them. But over those 7 years, I continued to grow and evolve, and we didn't have a mission statement at the property. We didn't have core values at the property, and I could start to see like where we would get hung up and why we were kind of getting held behind. And we did get some core values established, which was great. But and a lot of the line level employees and the departments really bought into it. Especially, it was really it was really great to see like the progress we can make from that.
So wait, so just by implementing some core, like you were seeing like, okay, there's these things that we keep getting hung up on, like, you know, our operations are good, everything looks good, but yet we still are getting like lost at some of these things. So you decide to implement some heart, some soul, some values, and that actually, and by living by that, it actually fixed the problems.
Well, it fixed some problems. Yeah. Not all of them, but you know, I think people want a sense of purpose when they're working, and
Yeah.
whatever that job may be. And, you know, I always kind of set out to make sure that whether you're washing dishes or cleaning rooms or whatever it is, like you have a huge purpose in what we're doing. And, you know, I used to give this big spiel at the new hire orientation every weekend. You know, I would talk about, you know, if the wine glass comes out is not clean, the whole thing falls apart, right? If you walk into that guest room and there's a little corner of a tissue in the trash can, the whole thing falls apart, right? Like there's so many moving parts along the way, and especially in a casino environment where you've got all these food and beverage outlets and you've got all these gaming outlets, and you know there's a lot of points along the way that could get sideways. So really, like just really hammering away on giving people purpose and why it's so important to do well, and you know working in you know, Native American environments, you know, you're producing for the community, and there's a lot of good that comes out of performing well. And you know, seeing dental clinics get built and treatment facilities get built and housing get built, and watching people go to college and get their college paid for because we are doing well. So it was a lot of really just educating folks of like, this is why it's important. This is, you know, your role in the big picture, and this is how we're going to do it, right? But the interesting thing, the hardest folks to truly buy into it and live by it was like our executive committee.
Really?
A lot of line level people didn't have a problem at all, but you know, some of the exec team, we had a lot of really long tenured folks. You know, I could tell like, you know, hey, I'm kind of pushing that maybe this might mean a little more accountability for everyone, not just our line level folks, but our all the way up, right? And it just wasn't, you know, anyways, it was just hard to make progress in that area. So I kind of had one foot out the door a little bit, to the point where, you know, I'm 7.5 years in. You know, I would get a recruitment call maybe every, you know, few months or something from, you know, on LinkedIn or whatnot. And, you know, I got one, and it was an interesting opportunity that I actually said, oh, it was a multi-property opportunity, kind of like a regional GM type of position down on the Oregon coast, and it looked pretty attractive. And, you know, I pursued it at the time, and I actually, you know, it was one of the first interview processes I went through where I won't say I didn't care if I got it or not, but I was like, I'm putting 100% like exactly who I am on the table. I'm not putting on any fronts. I'm not putting on any shows. Like I'm exact. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. And I got
love
an
that,
offer
man.
on
All
the job.
those,
And,
all that culture stuff, all those like reading and kind of building yourself up a little bit. You just kind of decided like you're not going to force anything. I love that.
yeah.
You know, it would have been maybe a little different than how young Dallas would have maybe gone into the interview, but you were doing it a little bit different.
Yeah. And I mean, man, the young Dallas I was probably like the thorn in so many front office manager and GM side. You know, it's funny, every once in a while I'll come across someone from back in the day and they are shocked that I am like a general manager of, I was ever a general manager of anything, much less in the hotel industry. But yeah, so I get this job, and I get the offer letter, you know, and it's a great position, and like it's a, you know, fairly substantial increase in pay. And it's like, you know, it's a pretty big move though. We're 7.5 years in Anacortes up there at Swinomish. I talk with my wife, and we more or less decide like we're going to do it, right? So I wake up, and it's May 3rd, 2019, and I'll tell you why I remember this date. So I go to work that day, and the sense of relief I had that day of like, man, like I'm moving on. Like, I could tell that it was the right decision to be leaving. And so I'm at work. I signed the offer letter. I sent it back over. I talked to the CEO at the company, and we set a start date, and I'm ready to go. Right. So May 3rd is my second son's birthday, and I get home. We put the kids to bed, and then my wife says, "We can't do this. We can't leave." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? We just talked about this and decided like yesterday. Like I just signed my offer letter like 3 hours ago, whatever it was." And she had sent like this. We typically don't do big like birthday parties for the kids. We always do something, obviously, but my wife had sent this email out to a group of friends saying, "Hey, it's Joey's birthday today. We're going to First Friday Mass in the morning, then we're just gonna go to the park and get some pizza. Whoever wants to come," and pretty informal. I guess like all these people show up, and like all the kids get around in a circle, and they all go around and talk about what they appreciate about my son. And my wife's just sitting there.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, but my wife is just like, we can't leave this community and this group of folks. And so we're having this conversation, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I have to call this guy the next morning on Saturday morning and renege and say, "Hey, I can't do it. And he was so great, and he was so gracious, and he even gave me another week to think about it. If it was me, I'd probably be like, whatever, man, moving on. So we didn't move forward with that. And so I'm like, okay, all right. So this is in May. So then fast forward 2 months later, and I knew, I knew the winds of change were about a little bit within the company I was at. The beginning of July, I get the call right from the chairman, and he's like, "Hey, can we meet with you this afternoon at 4:00?" I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." So I'm like, all right, something's afoot. So I go in, I sit down, and they say, "Hey, we had this retreat. The board had a retreat, and we want to make some changes, and we're gonna create a CEO position. Your colleague is going to be the CEO, and we still want you here, and but you're gonna just focus on the hotel, the RV park, and then essentially like banquet sales, but you don't have to worry about food and beverage operations anymore, like the restaurant, blah blah blah." So really, it was like they try to frame it up as like, I think the exact words were, less responsibility but the same pay. Like, isn't that great? And
wow, sounds awesome.
And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, I don't want less responsibility. I want more, and I'm like, do I have an option? Like, is this like, well, blah blah blah, and well, if it makes you feel any better, we didn't talk to anybody else. Like, we're just coming in and telling these guys like what's going to happen. I said, "Yeah, but I'm the only one that's being negatively affected. So yeah, if you brought me in and told me I was going to be the CEO, I would be like, great, right?" So,
right.
But to their credit, they were trying to keep everything as positive as possible, and there isn't any way that they would be able to make the changes that they were contemplating without talking to people, and so, but I get it, right? I get it. And to be honest, the move made sense. It made sense. It was a dual GM setup for 7 years, and it didn't make any sense to continue the road that we were going down. And, I think my persistence to kind of try to push us in one direction, some folks, probably took exception to that at some point. So, I go home, kind of think about it. And I'm like, at this point, there's no way I'm staying, right? It's not going to work. But I feel like I have a pretty good solution, or pretty good proposal, if you will, at hand, right? And even my wife kind of questioned me, and she was, I think, I have 6 kids, got a family to support. My wife doesn't work. Like I don't have anything lined up. So it's not like I can just quit. So anyways, I meet with them early the next morning, and I basically just say, hey, I think, here's a solution, right? Like, what do you guys think about it? And again, they were very gracious, and but the solution involved me leaving, right? And they had told me that during the retreat, one of the discussions was like, well, Dallas might leave, right? Like they probably know me better. Like this probably isn't going to fly. But the fact that they were willing to take that risk kind of sent the message to me on kind of where I fit in the big picture, right? Which it is what it is, right?
Not going to force anything, man. That's Dallas, not
gonna. So again, they were they were great. Like, hey, take 2 weeks, off. And I had just got back from like a vacation, like a week's long vacation. Take a couple more weeks. Make sure, really think about it. So I took the 2 weeks, and I was like we got back together, and I was like, no, like I don't, we couldn't come to any agreement that included me staying. But I think we came to a pretty good, solution that included me leaving. And again, so I don't have anything lined up at this point. So it was another one of those, like, what are you doing? Like, from the outside looking in, people are like, you've got this great job. You've been there 7.5 years. Like, you're crazy. What are you doing? And again, it was another, like, just follow my gut. Like, no, something's going to work out, something's going to work out. And I had been really contemplating for a long time doing something on my own. Right. And, I left, and I really dove into looking at properties more like, RV, cabin resort, glamping type of properties, to either purchase and own and operate, or to, raw land to develop. And at the same time, I had recruiters working for me, like, and I was doing interviews for various positions. And that's when the lookout popped up in that scenario. And, I didn't, we could get into it in a bit here about, the unique concept of the lookout, but, I had really gone pretty far down the road on this property in northern Idaho on Lake Chelan, and, cabins and whatnot. And, at the same time, like, the lookout thing was kind of progressing. But then it got to the point at the end where, like, the northern Idaho, the developing this campground, these cabins weren't going to work out. And then it panned out for the lookout to, they made an offer, and I took the job, started in December of 2019. So a little over a year. I've been here about 14 months or so now. So that's the very, very long story of how I got to where I'm at now.
So first let me ask you this. How many years did we just cover there in terms of from beginning to like now, basically?
Yeah. So that was 25. So
25 years. So a quarter century of hospitality experience.
Yeah.
We just covered there. This is why I love telling people stories and listening to people's stories about hospitality and stuff, is that it's just like life just like has come at you just like it does everybody. Like, different things happen, you move, you have kids, you get married, you try to become a professional football player, you do all these things, right? Yeah. Or you destroy your collarbone and you drive back to Arizona in a sling, and all while this is happening, you have the beautiful and awesome hotel and hospitality industry that kind of just is in the background through all of that.
Yeah.
It's kind of throughout life. It's just there, and it's, I don't know. That's just what makes me happy about it. It's like, it's just so unique from 15 years old, working at the pool to, to after you're, sitting down with your wife after your kid's birthday party and you're still working in the hotel industry.
Yeah.
After all that.
Yeah.
So, but now you end up at the Lookout, right?
Yeah.
And the Lookout is cool because, as you know, we were talking about off the record, your office is literally in a multi-bedroom house right now, which is really cool.
Yeah.
You not get that at your standard
No.
Hilton box or anything like that. So tell me a little bit about what that is so we can all kind of figure it out. Because when I first ran into you on LinkedIn and kind of started to take a look, I just assumed the Lookout was just a resort, like just like any old place. So and that's certainly not the case.
Yeah. The best way to maybe frame it up so people can picture it is that we are a resort full of Airbnbs, you know, of short-term rentals, of vacation homes. We like to say we're a vacation home resort community. So we're in north central Washington on Lake Chelan, which is, you know, north central part of the state. It's more deserty over here. It gets, you know, we hit triple digits. It's really hot, huge lake town, summer town. And it, you know, very popular in the summer, but it's beautiful in the winter as well. But really the Lookout started as a really more of a real estate development project, with always the intention that this rental program, this resort program, would grow as well. And we're modeled after a place called Seabrook on the Washington coast, which is the exact same setup as us. Probably, I don't know, 5-6 years ahead of where we're at now. So we're developing this neighborhood where we're on the lake, we have a waterfront with, you know, this beach swim area and a swim dock and 70 slip marina. We've got 2 resort pools. We've got parks and playgrounds. We've got a beautiful outdoor wedding and event venue that looks out over the lake, and, you know, to do weddings out there and music. And it's a true resort, but instead of brick and mortar hotel rooms, we have these beautiful vacation homes of all different shapes and sizes. And we sell real estate. So I had one of the things that was appealing about the Lookout job is one, getting into real estate and learning about like development and real estate development and what it takes. I had to go get my real estate license, which has been a great, another weapon to put in the arsenal, which is great. But we sell real estate and we sell, you know, lots and home plans. And then when a homeowner purchases the house and they build it, they have the option to enter it into our resort program. And if they do, we manage, it's just another room in our inventory, if you will, from hotel speak. It's like it's like expanding your hotel by one room, right? You now have that additional room of inventory, but it's a house. And then there's a revenue share between the homeowner and the resort. So from a buyer's perspective, it's like I get to buy, you know, a beautiful vacation home. All of these houses are second homes to folks. I think until recently, I think our last full-time resident moved out. They still own the home, but these are all second homes for folks. It's turnkey. They don't have to manage it. We do the whole thing. You know, if you go on our website, it's just like, you know, visiting a resort website, your arrival date, your departure date, your number of guests. And then instead of room types, you're served up houses, and you kind of filter through and you know, filter your amenities and locations and, you know, hot tubs and views and fireplaces and, you know, bedrooms and size. And so it's like, you know, so we run a resort with these homes, and it's great. And then the third aspect is the HOA. We run the homeowners association for the property as well. So the principles are still, you know, hospitality hotel principles when it comes to rate and revenue management and marketing. And you know, that was another big appeal for me, is this had historically been, again, like a real estate focused. And as we're getting to the end of our real estate inventory and our resort program is growing, we're going to have probably 110 houses in the program right now for this upcoming season, which probably equates to, I don't know, maybe a 400 room hotel, something like that. I mean, these are all,
that's 3, pretty 4, good, man. That's
5-bedroom hotel. It's crazy. You know, we get crazy, you know, nightly rates are insane. And, but they never had anyone in this position with any kind of resort or hotel or hospitality background. So even though we're 10 years in to the project, the resort program is 6 years in, because the first 4 years was just selling houses and getting them built. And so we're still very much in like startup mode, and kind of going back to my, my desire to always be part of something that's like growing and building. And, so we're building, a big focus right now with the crew that we have on company culture and best practices, and really getting, we're not, getting intuitive hospitality decision-making going on. And so that part always, appeals to me as well. So yeah, it's just a great, really unique concept of, a neighborhood of Airbnbs that's got central management.
I mean, talk about just appropriate for like you can listen to like all these experts and stuff talk about trends of what's going on in the hospitality industry, and it's just like it's ironic because those mid-sized to large box Hiltons that you were working at are probably temporarily closed at the moment. I'm sure you could go and see that. Meanwhile, you are growing and expanding beyond what your wildest imagination would have told you, during this crisis and everything. And it's like, I guess my question to you in regards to that would be like, what's the biggest takeaway and like piece of learning that you've had since you stepped away from hotels and basically immediately jumped into this kind of Airbnb neighborhood, so to speak, simultaneously during the COVID crisis? Like, what can you take away in your first year?
Man, I mean, well, we at the beginning of this thing, it's crazy to think, I mean, it's February now we're coming up on a year of this, right about a year that we started dealing with this, right? Like March is really when things started getting heavy last year. And, we were in the same boat in the beginning. We were, what's going to happen? We closed down the entire month of April, the last 2 weeks of March. And then the entire month of April, we were dark. We cleared the books of any reservations. We had, the stay-at-home order. We're an interesting, because we're not technically a hotel or resort, but what the nail in the coffin for us was the city put a moratorium on short-term rentals, which is, was what we are. And at the time, we were trying to figure this out. We weren't trying to go against the grain. So I think May 5th was the state's like reopening, the stay-at-home order expired. We didn't really know what was going on. Our governor kind of waited till the week of, so we didn't really have any like planning to do. And again, we're a big summer seasonal property. So the city and this whole area was like, we need Memorial through Labor Day, and it's early May, what's going to happen? And again, there was no reservation activity. We had massive cancellations. Our booking pace before COVID in mid-March everything was pacing like 100% year over year in every metric, rental nights, rental revenue, rental stays. We saw that decline all the way down to about 20%. So we lost about 80% of our pace, and just millions of dollars of cancellations. Zero interest from real estate, right? It just was a standstill. So for a while there, we're like, this could go one way or the other. But man, oh man, as soon as we opened back up and, travel behaviors change, people aren't flying as much. They're not leaving the state. They're shying away from like your brick and mortar hotels, and they're searching for, individual houses and Airbnbs and VRBOs, which is what we are. And then it just exploded. It took off on us. That even continued into the, historically slower wintertime, because at least in Washington State, like people aren't in school, people are working from home. There's no, high school sports. There's no kids sports or activities. Like our state's been pretty shut down. So we've really, the work from anywhere, learn from anywhere. We're 300 days of sunshine here in Chelan. So a lot of people coming over from the coast when it's gray and rainy and whatnot.
Oh, wow.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So don't normally think of that when you think of Washington.
You don't. You think of like, the rain. The summers are great on the west side, but, so essentially our resort business doubled. And then the real estate blew up as well, because people were looking to, have that retreat to get away to. people that might've been on the fence for a while on that second home or that vacation home. And I think this just put them over the edge. And real estate over here has been, we're a Zoom town. You know, if you've heard that phrase recently, we're the epitome of a Zoom town, like these little vacation towns, and people are flocking to and buying second homes. And so from a business standpoint, I almost feel guilty, you know, talking about it, because I know so many in our industry and a lot of people that I know are struggling. But we were just
that juxtaposition between like you're thinking back to like the early part of your career to where you are now, and it's just like, you know, what would this situation have been like had you been elsewhere? And probably guaranteed to not be nearly as good, if not much worse.
No, not at all. And I think to go back to your question, like the takeaway is really, you know, that hospitality and the basic principles of hospitality and taking care of people, you know, they're universal, and they transcend any, you know, almost any industry. They can be applied, I guess, in any industry. And given we still prop ourselves up as a hospitality company, we very much are so. I mean, these are, you know, people coming on vacation, bringing their families, creating memories and traditions, and getting married, and the whole 9 yards. But that regardless of the environment, that those principles of hospitality and that approach of just, you know, taking care of people and, you know, treating others the way that, you know, you want to be treated, and, you know, just thinking about what additional can I do for this person. Just, you know, it's good to do no matter what, in any industry, in any scenario, at any time. And, you know, probably this time more than ever, that we just need to do that, just in general, how we should just live our lives like that, much less regardless of what industry we're in. But, you know, it was very apparent that, that's just the way to be. It's better to be that way than not.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That is certainly the lifestyle that, you know, makes the world a better place. And that's what makes being in hospitality that much easier, is because that's, you know, when you're in that industry, it's like, oh, I get to live this in my career and outside of it. And it all blends together. Now, one thing I'm curious about actually is like managing a vacation rental versus a regular hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because, you know, you described kind of from the guest experience standpoint, the reservations process is very similar when you go on and you kind of choose what you want in the website and your arrival and departure date. And the revenue management side of it is very similar and everything like that. But in terms of the management of it all, and how does that compare? Because I'm sure a lot of us, myself included, you know, with only hotel experience, curious to know.
Yeah, it's, you know, again, a lot of it's the same. The principles are the same, right? And just trying to think through, you know, again, instead of walking into a hotel room, they're walking into a home, right? And that home needs to be, you know, it needs to be immaculate. You know, so we have the same, you know, challenges, operational challenges of, you know, housekeeping and laundry and turning houses and having houses ready on time. I mean, we have days in the summer where we've got to turn, we have 40 same day turns where people are checking out of a, you know, 3,000 square foot house at 11 with 5 bedrooms. And that thing has to be immaculate in, you know, 4 hours. And we've got 40 of them to do. Like so it's the same. It's the same. It's just a different.
And I thought those 300 square foot rooms were tough to turn.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, and, you know, and instead of, you know, corridors and lobbies, we have, you know, streets and parks, and we have all these common areas outside, and we have pools, we have waterfronts. So again, it's the same principles and it's the same approach. Just the physical setup is just a little different, but it's really the same thing. It really is. You know, your service, when you make house calls, right? You know, the Wi-Fi is not working, you know, Wi-Fi is not working in a hotel room. Wi-Fi is not working in the house. It's the same thing. How do we handle those guest interactions? You know, my propane tank's out. You know, it's all the same, just in a different environment. You know, and I think just, you know, the little differences being a lot of we have guests who will come and never see or interact with any of our employees because they can go right to their home, and they don't need anything. A lot of them are very self-sufficient as long as we have everything teed up and dialed in for them. Yeah. So again, it's the same. You just have to kind of change your thinking of, okay, how are we going to approach this? And to be honest, a lot of that wasn't here kind of before I got here. It was kind of like, but really taking the hospitality principles and implementing them and thinking about things and viewing things through that lens. It lines up pretty well. It lines up pretty well and it works.
I just got chills when you said that, because it's what we need. It's like those, again, to echo your sentiments, those same principles of hospitality and operating a business with hospitality as a hotel is done. Just having that is like just a huge value proposition just for a person to like boast, like to have that with them. And you're kind of living proof of that. Like you've been able to almost in a very entrepreneurial way kind of build up this startup, so to speak, with this kind of vacation rental vertical within this community, and fast as well, during the time that it was needed. With that being said, I do want to ask you, for the people listening who are maybe unfortunately aren't with their hotel anymore, they're laid off, they've been impacted by this, and they hear about like something like this, the Lookout, they've never heard of it before, and they're wondering, wow, maybe there's opportunities like this for me, or maybe I can switch and maybe it's just not a brick and mortar hotel. Like, what kind of advice would you give somebody for taking that leap and kind of getting out of their comfort zone a little bit?
Yeah, no, good question. I think, trusting your gut. I think, like, when it's right, and, but really I think thinking more broader, like, especially if you've got a good body of work and you have these skills that you might not even know that you have, that are, that can certainly be applied in different industries or in a different way, and just really get creative with it. And to be very, again, easy for me to say, sitting here, but to be kind of selective, when,
Right.
I think you and I talked about this a little bit, and again, easy for me to say sitting on my spot right now, and you got to do what you got to do. But I think a really good question to ask any new, job, or that if you're laid off, you're looking for your next position, your next company to work for, I would ask them, hey, do you have core values, and do you have a mission? How did you apply those during the pandemic when you had to make tough decisions, and how quick did you start clipping people because of the financial aspect? We talk, those companies that talk about our employees are like family and this and that and other, and how quickly that proved to not be the case. Not all companies, right? Not all. But I think that's an important thing to, and again, you got to do what you got to do, and you got to get a job, and you got to provide, and I get it. But if you have the opportunity to be selective and really position yourself to put your skills to work, and trust in your gut, and and again, really know kind of what you're getting into. And I think how people have approached this whole situation we're in is very telling of certain companies. And so I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but I think just get creative, and know that you can never go wrong with just, again, basic hospitality principles and treating people well. That'll do nothing but serve you well in any aspect of your life, and how you decide to move forward. And not to be cliche, but just hang in there and have some grit. You gotta have a little bit of grit and fight through it. Well, I'm hopeful that, there are better days to come sooner rather than later, and everyone will be able to get back up on their feet again very soon. So.
Yeah. And I think well said overall. I again, to kind of build on that, yeah, there are some people who may need to just get whatever they can in the meantime just to provide, because it is kind of a survival mode for a lot of people. Certainly understandable. But I think the one thing to remember is that, you may have spent your entire career in hotels, but the skills that you have, like, you're not stuck. You're actually at an advantage over most people, because you know how to treat somebody, you know how to deal with somebody when they're upset, you know how to provide attention to detail to maximize somebody's experience. And that's a rare skill. So I feel like, hoteliers have something to be proud of in their background, regardless if they go back to it or they do something else. It's just, hoteliers are a different breed of people. And I think we should all be proud of that, regardless of where we end up or what we do afterward.
100%.
Well, Dallas, with that, I will thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for your contributions to hospitality. And thanks for sharing your story with us. 25 years in the industry, just hotels just being the backbone of every life curveball, every decision made, everything along the way. Hospitality was there to kind of keep you grounded, keep you afloat, keep you engaged. That's just what I love about the industry. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me. And again, love what you guys are doing, and keep charging ahead.
Yeah, we'll do, man. We'll do. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another podcast interview right here on YouTube. Again, if you have not done so already, I encourage you to go down below, subscribe, turn on notifications, give this video a thumbs up. And if you love the story, be sure to share it with someone you think would enjoy it. Again, more information on Hospitality MD is available in the description below, along with Dallas's LinkedIn and other social medias. Check it out, and we'll see you next week on Hospitality MD right here on YouTube.